are starting a new. Today we're starting a new melacha. And we are up to chapter 16, and there's a couple of very interesting ideas that Rabbi Melamed shares with us. Besides the actual melacha, also a spiritual introduction and explanation. What's so special about lighting a fire? So the Torah states, "But the seventh day is Shabbat of the Lord your God. You shall not do any melacha." And we've talked before that melacha is not work because I can take the couch up and down the stairs, and that's not a prohibition on Shabbat. But melacha means a creative labor uh, that I have to use my brains for, and that what differentiates us between us and the animals. So the sages explain that the intent of this verse is to forbid all 39 melachot that were instrumental in erecting the Mishkan. One of these melachot is hav'ara, kindling a fire, which was necessary to prepare dyes for the Mishkan's curtains. Nevertheless, the Torah explicitly mentions the prohibition of hav'ara in the beginning of Parshat Va'akel. You shall kindle no fire throughout your settlements on Shabbat. The sages ask why was necessary for the Torah to single out Havara, and there was two different explanations or opinions. Rav Natan explains that the Torah was using one melacha to serve as an example to teach us that while all 39 prohibited melachot are derived from one verse, the one that we quoted at the beginning from Parashat Yitro, you shall not do any melacha. Nevertheless, each and every melacha is an independent prohibition, and therefore, if one unknowingly performs multiple melachot at the same time, he must bring a sin offering for each one of them. And actually, I think we mentioned this a little bit in passing, that there's two options for somebody to do a few melachot by mistake. One is that he doesn't know that this melacha is forbidden, so maybe he knows that you're not allowed to kindle a fire, but he doesn't know that you're not allowed to sew or cut according to measurement, like we talked about earlier this week. Sorry, last week. Um, but the other option is even more severe. Is somebody wakes up in the morning and doesn't even know that it's Shabbat. He thinks that it's Sunday or whatever, and so then they can do all kinds of melachot, and afterwards, when they find out that they were wrong about what day of the week it was, they have to bring a sin offering for each one of them when the temple will be built, Bezrat Hashem Bimra B'Amenu. The awesome power of fire allows man to rule over the forces of nature and harness them in his service. Through the use of fire, people created metal tools, improved food, and later created powerful machines. Perhaps this is why Havara was chosen out of all the melachot to express man's tremendous ability to improve the world. However, on Shabbat, every Jew must rest and rise above all creative activity. We must remember our Creator who took us out of Egypt, and we must enjoy Shabbat via Torah study and festive meals. I'll just add two things. One is that it's also the first thing that Adam and Eve did when they came out of the Garden of Eden on Motzei Shabbat on Saturday night, because that's why we have the fire for Havdalah. If you remember, we talked about that in the chapters that talk about consecrating the Shabbat. And something else that's related more specifically to Melachot, um, there is a discussion towards the end of the tractate of Shabbat. It's called Perak Rabbi Eliezer's the Mila. Rabbi Eliezer had the opinion that all the melachot of Shabbat, all the creative labor that we can do, are set aside when there is a circumcision. So he included even cutting wood to make a fire to boil the water for the mohel to be able to wash their hands and also satanize the area where he's going to do the milah. And even today in our shul in the last few brises, the mohel had to have hot water, and before the boiler was working, we actually had to boil water. But thank God it wasn't on Shabbat, because Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is not accepted. We do not cut wood for fire on Shabbat. And so, but I think that the fact that he has that opinion, it shows how much our sages talked about what to do and what not to do for Shabbat when there's another mitzvah that seems to be contradicting it or disturbing its sanctity. So I think that that's another reason why fire is so important. At first glance, there's a basic question about the melacha of havara. We have a ruling: all destructive acts are exempt by Torah law but liable rabbinically. Therefore, if one tore an item of clothing or broke a utensil, he is not obligated to bring a sin offering. To be sure, he transgresses rabbinically, but not by Torah law. In light of this, and given that burning an item generally ruins it, why is lighting a fire on Shabbat considered a transgression of a Torah prohibition? The answer is that any time positive elements provided by the fire, heating or lighting one's home, outweigh the loss of the burned item, it is classified as a constructive rather than a destructive act. We would all love if our car engine ran on fuel, but we wouldn't have to go back to the gas station to refill the tank. We want a miraculous gas tank that would always provide the fire for the engine, but of course we have to burn the oil, the gasoline, in order to create that engine power, and that's why the idea of it outweighs the loss of the burned item as opposed to considering it just a destructive act. Of course, arson and stuff like that is destructive, but then you would be liable for other things. Actually, the Gemara in Baba Kama mentions that if somebody caused a loss of life through fire on Shabbat, um, they would be tried on the one that is more severe. So if nobody was killed, only injured or monetary loss, um, then the person would be liable for lighting a fire on Shabbat. But if a person lit the fire on Shabbat and somebody was killed as a result, they would be executed with the transgression of killing a person as opposed to stoning, which is for Shabbat. That's how I remember it from Baba Kama, but I think that we might have to have more look into it. And let's just give a couple of examples of what the laws are of Havara. So one who lights a fire of any size that meets some need violates a Torah prohibition. It makes no difference whether he starts the fire by rubbing stones together, using a magnifying glass to focus the sun's rays on straw, lighting a match, or turning on the electricity. It also does not matter if the fire is fueled by oil, kerosene, or electricity. Anytime one intends to start a fire and succeeds in doing so, he transgresses a Torah prohibition. However, one who merely causes sparks to be released does not violate Torah law. Furthermore, if the sparks were released unintentionally, there is no prohibition at all. Therefore, one may wear woolen or synthetic clothes, even though sometimes sparks are released, what we call statics, when putting them on or taking them off, since these sparks are released unintentionally and to no purpose, there is no prohibition. So we'll stop here and we'll continue Bezos Hashem tomorrow, and we'll wish everybody a Chag